right, we are now streaming. First Fight by C. Sebastian Grace. You ever just sat and watched an alligator steal her happy ass some sun for hours on a bed of flattened sawtooth? Did you know the spines on her back, evolutionary, heat sinks, they come born, drinking radiation? Did you know they come born, this or that gender, depending on the year, season, temperature, and their fate, placement within the nest? Did you know they come born with a tiny tooth dorsal on the snout tip that they must drag across the inside of their leather casing over and over? They must get strong enough to rip leather, to claw, thrash through their squirm of siblings, route through detritus, their mama stamped down solid around their shells to protect them, but also to make them fight for it, that their first fight is being born. Did you know they come born grinning? Hello and thank you and welcome to the re-celebration, re-release, whatever it is you want to call it, of the Careless Embrace of the Boneshaker. Thank you all for being here today. We have 9 amazing poets for you tonight. You're going to hear from Jan Steckel, Craig Kite, Natasha Moni, S.B. Stokes, Francine Witte, Brendan Gillett, Dan Raphael, Mary Mackey, and Richard Loranger. So we are going to just get started with our first reader. It's Jan Steckel.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Jane and David, for making this happen, and thanks to everybody who's here today. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to give a kind of a global content warning for all my poems tonight or today for violence, illness, and disturbing medical procedures. The first poem is for Tamir Rice, killed by a policeman while he was playing in the park with a toy gun. The Fall. I don't want to be Joan of the narrative arc here, wielding my flaming sword of story to drive you out of my personal bleeding heart liberal paradise. But here's a prompt. Write a poem using the words Grant, Bell, Garner, Brown, Ford, and Rice. Employ a light touch. No sing-song or doggerel, no sentimentality, please, no rants. Attention to form, but not formality. Invoke all the senses. Let me see, hear, feel what the 12-year-old saw, heard, felt, waving that BB gun around the park. The gold and orange leaves of Cleveland, the smell of them rotting in rainwater. The black and white pulling to the curb, the crack, the pavement rushing up. So thanks. That was the opening poem of my book, Like Flesh Covers Bone, which won a couple awards in 2019 and just came out in Kindle. And I'm going to put the link for that in the chat later. The next few poems are new ones, pandemic poems. Queen of Sheba Market. In the turquoise painted bodega in Samaná, you could get enough beans for one meal, a dollop of tomato sauce, a pinch of cilantro, a piece of an onion. Everything aliquoted down to the atomic amount, the very smallest portion that could be priced. Because who had money for the whole can of beans? Excuse me, technical difficulties. The whole onion, the whole pound of beans. You could get 2 aspirin folded into a brown paper. You could get the news of just that day, told to you in snatches of broken narrative, overheard, secondhand. In the hot, pink, hand-painted bodega in Oakland, you could get a whole can of beans already cooked and seasoned. You could get a frozen pizza and a Dos Equis, or a Modelo Negro, or a cold Pepsi, or a dozen different brands of filtered cigarettes. You could get pulled out of the bodeguita by a man who took the stroller from you with the kid in it and wheeled it calmly to the child's grandfather, who took the baby inside the apartment building, while the man returned just as calmly and began hitting you methodically in a businesslike way until you were dripping in tears and blood, and you would both have disappeared before the police called by the white woman arrived. There are bright bodegas everywhere. There are pale-skinned women calling the police, but too afraid to get out of their cars everywhere. The next poem was included in the Careless Embrace of the Boneshaker, Laudanum for Jacaro. The last of my eggs are trying to jump ship. My left ovary wants to chew its way out. A hot water bottle pressed to my belly, I moan, beached on my sleep number bed. When I was 3, the glowing space heater told me stories. My trundle bed was a caravel. My teddy bear protected me from pirates. Pillows fish-wriggled between my thighs. At 35, I pitched my birth control pills off the Golden Gate. Estrogenized sturgeon, big as manatees, swam under San Quentin. There were plenty of female fish in the sea. At 45, that sinister ovary swelled, its capsule stretched with the king tides. The naval surgeon in the emergency room gave me tincture of opium for the pain. Let my eggs float free like fish row rafts adrift in the salty swell. I lie in my seabed of crushed pearls. Above my head, a keel groans and sunlight wavers. Thank you. Recounting Sylvia Gorodetskaya. Let me tell you of an old man who went to town to bring back a wife for his son, but on the way home decided to take the bride for himself. At the vigorous age of 80, he fathered my great-grandmother Sylvia on the young bride who had been destined for his own son. He would chase young Sylvia around the courtyard with a stick to beat her when she was bad. He was only a malamud, a Hebrew teacher for shtetl boys, but he sent his daughter to the gymnasium in St. Petersburg, where she learned to recite Pushkin in Russian. At the age of 16, she saw a group of people marching past, chanting for bread. Bread was a good thing, she thought, so she followed them. When the police broke up the communist demonstration with bullets, she was shot in the throat. As soon as she could travel, her mother sent her to America to protect her from the Tsar's police. Her father didn't die until she was 26, far away in New York, running through husbands the way he had run through wives. She left my great-grandfather for a communist doctor when my grandfather was 16 years old. His sisters went with her. My grandfather stayed with his father. When I was 12, she showed me the scar on her throat, recited a Pushkin poem to me from memory with gestures, gave me a silver dollar from 1906, the year she came over from Russia. Over lunch in a diner, she stage whispered that my grandfather, whom she had abandoned over half a century earlier, wanted it on the kitchen table in the middle of the day in front of the children. He likewise accused her of nymphomania. She walked 2 miles each day in her 90s and didn't die until my first year of college. Afterward, her lawyer called my grandfather, her son, who hadn't spoken to her in 50 years, to say that his mother left him $1 in her will. Donate it to charity for me in her name, said my grandfather. In a previous life, I was a pediatrician. Winter clinic. If you haven't seen 40 kids in 40 hours on a clinic night in winter, peered in 80 ears, listened to 40 rapid hearts, felt 40 hot foreheads, if you haven't prescribed antibiotics, diaper rash cream, humidifiers and inhalers, given the nod to warm yerba buena tea with honey, if you haven't talked and listened in Spanish while writing notes in the chart in English, also listening to a tiny chest or gazing through a lens into a waxy ear, the drum red hot, if you haven't looked into the ears of the other 3 kids in the family, even though only one was registered for a 5-minute appointment, If you haven't talked a mother through it while you stuck a long needle into the spine of her 5-day-old infant and shown her the spinal fluid dripping out clear, telling her how reassuring that was, keeping her still with your voice while you tortured her baby. If you haven't coughed yourself through a flu season in a pediatrics department, if you haven't worked 36 hours straight while panting with pneumonia, if you haven't gotten chicken pox for the second time in your life at 36 years old, got pox in your throat and your vulva on the insides of your eyelids, so when you finally came back to work, you could only drink milkshakes. If you haven't watched a 6-month-old die that you've cared for since she popped out of her mother's womb months early, if you haven't cried as you slow walked her code, looked into her parents' eyes as they said, "Let her go," then I don't want to hear your opinion over who should keep working through a pandemic, or who deserves a vaccine, or who is making money, or what you think doctors want, or why they do what they do. Thank you. You can get my books on Amazon or Zeitgeist Press, and I'll put links in the chat. Looking forward to hearing everybody else. Thank you. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Lawton, one of the other editors of Great Weather for Media, and it's nice to see your faces out there, many of which I haven't seen in a good long time. And we've been short on faces, and all of us everywhere. So it's nice to revisit this book. And I look forward to, from many of you in the Great Weather satellite cities, I look forward to the time when we can come and visit you and read together there, and when you can come and read at our series in beautiful downtown New York City. Now I'm going to introduce the next reader, who's come in from, usually he's out saving the world, making the planet a better place, and every once in a while he poems. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Kite. Craig Kite.
Thanks, David. It's really nice to see everyone. Great Weather for Media readings have always been a really special thing in my life. And I miss the days of being in the city with y'all. And I'll just jump right in to some poems. This one is called Between Jobs. If idle hands are the devil's workshop, then an idle mind is his Dave and Buster's. I can't understand the TV when I'm sad. Laugh tracks sound like cold, damp towels. Comedians have mothballs in their mouths. Praise and worship are now marketable skills. What do I do for a living? I make things. Aren't thoughts things? I think they are. This next poem is called Still Between Jobs. Dawn breaks. A clock flashes 8s. A sports car alarm cries cock-a-doodle-doo. An ambulance ambulates. I limp to the bus stop, holding a paper cup of coffee without drinking it, and practice poor posture. I consider my great ape body. It's in okay shape, not great. I wonder about animal depression and how often it happens in the woods. My neighbor explodes out of her front door in a clamor and then goes back inside. I surmise that she is late and has forgotten her phone by the toaster after deciding there was no time to make toast. I have nothing but time until I die, and ample empty calories pour out of my ears. This poem is called When I Met God. I didn't see anything at all. I only heard it. It didn't sound like a burning bush telling me to take off my shoes, nor the articulate scream that I've been trying to compose. It didn't sound like a transmission, nor a strange transfiguration, nor a cryptic conversation, nor a rough moon landing. It was a tranquil voice telling me to be patient, and it sounded exactly like Morgan Freeman. This poem is called Suburban Dystopia. A Technicolor dreamcoat languishes in the landfill, within smelling distance of a housing development ghosted after foreclosure epidemic, or the rapture, or the plant shutting down, or the rising of the sea, or the acid ocean jellyfish invasion, and or any manner of imminent anthropogenic apocalypse. A water tower full of blue pills was projected here. What we got instead was a circumference of static. Crepuscular rays make a dome over the cul-de-sac in which a kid was once taught from an international bestseller that babies need salvation from human nature, from the hell inside hellos, from original sin, or the generic sadness on adult faces. Like something out of place yet permanent, such as a phone booth on a beach, incessantly ringing, drinking the occasional tidal wave. This poem is called Game Face. Job equals persona equals self minus esteem equals champion equals breadwinner equals good provider equals station wagon plus a plus Ford truck driver minus you are a serial mortgage refinancer minus you are a human minus resource equals solve for what happens to resources. Now I'll read the poem that was published in The Careless Embrace of the Boneshaker. It's called Brutalism. The tower has a spirit, because all stones do. It star-spangles the narrative vines and culture wars the house ghosts. And the lack of lobby plants grows like imaginary spindles. I know the name of the man with a lion mane who lives on the billionth floor. He calls me him. He's Stuyvesant. We make like blood and run. Concrete is a good sounding board. For most men conjuring ambitions at dawn, I thrash about the contours of a hive mind and blow up Lion Man. Stuyvesant has elephant ears, a golden shower basin, and kitchens of caged finches for breakfast, and X's in his pupils. He whispers commercial incantations over top my tap water and tells me that my living situation is small potatoes. This poem is called Charities. Really rich people funding nonprofits that pay working class people minimum wage to stand on the corner and ask working class people to give money to really poor people to fix problems that really rich people created. And I pay my taxes. This one's called Like Father, Like Son. Mother told son that he was born smiling and not crying at all. Son didn't believe her and developed major depression, but tried to have a good attitude about it. She said he had an unusual amount of dark and heavy hair, although it would later turn dirty blonde and start to fall out in his 20s. Son and mother sat on a brown corduroy couch and stared at green shag carpet while father went out to labor in the heat and never came back home. Son asked mother, what was past the sky? Mother said, space. Son asked, what's past space? Mother said, God. This was when son learned that God the Father would always be separate from his world. And this last poem is called How to Meditate Badly. Watch a rat crawl into a boot. Think of nothing. Have an epiphany. That crowd control would be a killer name for a band. Reach in pocket for cell phone. Google whether crowd control is already the name of a band. Throw phone against the wall. Think of nothing. Thanks. I appreciate the time.
Let's hear it for Craig Kite and crowd control. Fantastic. Folks, you know, it's hard to do this in Zoom and to feel everyone's encouragement. If you feel like using that chat room space to say that you like something, or if you want to give jazz hands or snaps or whatever, you know, do those things. It's hard to do this without the applause, but, you know, having that encouragement is amazing. This book that we released this, correct me if I'm wrong, July of 2016. So it's an interesting time mark because it's right before or during the election of that time and pre-pandemic. So it's a special place. And I really feel like the cover says it all as to where we were as a society. With that said, I will get off my little pedestal. And our next poet to the stage is Natasha Moni.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I think I've read maybe 4 times for y'all in the last 5 years, and I will keep saying yes because your readings are so fantastic. This issue was so special for me because I learned of so many different writers, some who have become friends, and also because there's an interview with Thurston Moore, who was my teenage musician heart crush. So happy to be in here with Thurston Moore. I'm going to start with the poem that's in this collection, and I will just say a little bit about that, which is that in an altered state in Dolores Park during Easter, when there was an Easter bunny, maybe not wearing a top, handing out very special chocolates to my friend who gave one to me, which was an absolute mistake, but resulted in this poem. Easter, and I take what you have given me. Hunky Jesus Contest, Dolores Park, San Francisco, 2009. Everywhere men wore their crosses as lawn ornaments, I collapsed. Above me, the legs of strangers, and you let me fall completely. My head against a lawn of hallelujahs. Somewhere on a nearby hill, a bunny clutches a basket of chocolates. Here I learn to distrust anyone who bears breasts before supper. So I am, thank you. I'm gonna switch gears. I will say, without going into too much, I had 2 major love losses in the last 2 weeks, one to death and one a romantic loss, and you're gonna hear that in these poems that are coming up. I really hope this is the last bitter love poem I ever write. I haven't written one in about 10 years, but you know, sometimes you just have to. So Cracked. This once full carton of eggs I see you have broken every solitary. If you are the one, how am I alone? Straining each impossible yellow center through incisors. Baby, baby, come on. Tell me the one about chickadees, how they sing their names incessantly, fall for their own false image, chipping at every side mirror of every vehicle parked in your drive. Chickadee, dee, 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 dee. If I am the one serving omelets on your last day, go ahead and tweet, 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 tweet. This field of shells, this mine of glass, I will not. First, the house across the street caught on fire. The house down the street caught on fire. Does location matter? It was a house, uninhabited. I had just watched a show about a house that caught on fire. When sirens started, I thought I was sleeping. Smoke entered our bathroom, snuck into our bedroom. As I tore up that flight of stairs in my summer pajamas, you lay in bed snoring. Neighbors collected on their porches. It was that house, the ginger, or maybe the brick. Fire trucks parked so close to our cars that we're so close to the hydrant, but not that close. By morning, the sidewalks blank. By morning, everything fizzled. Overly roasted beans stained our teeth coffee, smell of camp, and the juncos feasted on bugs on the backyard maple, half dead by neglect. Maybe the tree, not ours, and the house, not ours either. No morning nor gull, not even a Canada or cloud, each home silent as Sunday. Every small bird cut its beak on a new splinter of day. And I'm going to, thank you, close with some poems from my first collection, which is called The Cardiologist's Daughter. It came out in 2014. And my friend who I lost, who I won't say too much about because I think the news is still circulating, so it could be alarming. But she helped me get through pre-med. She was my rock. She sat by me every day. And so these poems are for her. When asked what you know about grief, you remind me of me. That I don't believe in umbrellas or eggs or beets or anything that could pass for an egg, an umbrella, a beet. You tell me there is a meadow beyond the fence over there and how it disappeared your dog. But the fence is falling, has been in a perpetual state of suspension since you and I have, and you are allergic to fur. You're in the middle of an omelet without ketchup only because there isn't, and you tell me grief is like this as you point to your plate, and I agree. When asked what you know, you tell me of a field above a hill below a trail that keeps expanding. How you never approached the ocean, only collected advances as others weeds. You tell me the trail leads no one. You remind me of what migrates. I remind you of wind, how it holds the red tail steady. You say current is current, treading inevitable. We are featherless, our legs relinquish. If you find the barn empty where the red finch sings, if you find yourself sudden as hunger. And the last poem I'll read from this collection is about the moment where everything pretty much transformed for me as a cardiologist's daughter, getting to visualize and hold a heart in my hands for the first time in gross anatomy lab. It seemed like it took decades to get me to that moment. And it's the last poem in The Cardiologist's Daughter. In January, our rib cages are cleaved. Then there is the moment when we are asked to open our palms, curl our fingers to receive what skipped, operated with impulse solely, to accept this collection of cells once examined below scope would appear striated, but not just striated, specialized. This organ of pulse and organization, this synergist of breath, a muscle of varying mass with which desire was implied, volumes read, between and innermost smooth, a novel of unending until the moment before now. And I will close with a poem that was written in the Bay Area, which is where I did my pre-med at Oakland and Mills. but is really about my experience of going to naturopathic medical school and forming what I called a country in the back of the auditorium, which were the people who I bonded with. And I feel like this is so much, I read this poem at the reading 5 years ago when the election was happening, and I still feel so much we have to find those people who we hold close and call our own country. It was then we began to call ourselves a country. It was bold, but not without reason. For how long may we pretend we aren't our own within another? The farmer on a tractor delivering hay sings for self. The rattler sunning minds her own. We watch our step. The dark horse carries on in the heated, an eye toward eventual. The sheep commence their ascent toward a belief of richer. We take the occasional along a hill we've never to find our heels once more. Thank you so much.
Show your love for Natasha Moni. And Natasha, feel free if there's a link to drop into the chat box for the cardiologist's daughter. Moving right along, I mentioned our great weather satellite cities, and definitely Oakland, California, that was just mentioned, is one of them. As a matter of fact, the whole Bay Area is like our menage a trois when we travel. And we've had a lot of adventures that I won't get into specifically with our next reader. Here comes SB Stokes. Take yourself off mute, SB.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to see my East Coast family. I'll try to not go on too long. I think everything I'm reading today is probably new stuff. And if you're not on my old-fashioned mailing list, you probably haven't seen or heard this. This first one's just called For Indiana. Ash-mouthed, choking out truths, my perfect passenger, your laughter an elixir. You cloud me in smoke, bump like a moth against the edges of our shared world. To know your smell is a blessing I couldn't have anticipated. To be seen by you, yet another gift given. You hold on to me, hold me together, drink in my laughter, swallow each of my tears. Thank you. This one's called 20/21. We are moving, sailing on 2 feet most times. So what if the fog is not so much constant as inescapable? What if your doorknobs are butter knives and your hands just hot biscuits? A whole year got folded up and stuffed into the pages of a book called something I can't remember. We are born with a bad bone, meant to be starved. Our whispering voices can be a key or a door locked from the inside. Windows became eyeglasses, air turning with the seasons. Can you remember what 2 years ago yelled from the moving car window? People call it sleepwalking, but dreams are just traveling as fantasy was so constant, so distant, it became our everything. This one's called A New Way to Listen. We have a neighbor with an adult child, a family member who screams a hellish scream from inside their glassed-in porch or standing just inside the cyclone fence surrounding their cement front yard. When I first heard her, I was alone in my bed, confused before I recognized, before I knew or could hear the terror in her voice. I mistook her front yard outbursts for the migratory call of Canadian geese. After the second or third time being chased out of a dream in the wee hours of the night or in the morning, her indecipherable screeds punching my guts back into my body, thrown down suddenly back into my bed. Ripping yelps and yells, seething manic anger, like an evil spell cast, rhythmically warping the darkness around me. I was no longer frightened. Thank you, folks. This one's called Beatniks, All of Us. Dirty nails and moth-eaten faces looking out windows, glazed in, hopelessness and confusion, so bohemian. Our home layers unwashed and philosophical, dirty dishes and dust, our constant companions. Trapped cats wearing masks, myopic Facebook feedings pretend to rebel against some imagined or orchestrated debacle. Phantom responses recorded, the streets of US cities constantly being recorded, broadcast into reality, cigarette ashes for pants. Are we afraid, inside or out? Endless fireworks, rooms flooded with tears, new fears induced daily, hoarding our frustrations, transmitting inherited paranoias. Smash your hands like the dead, smoldering cigarette filter melting into a form no one recognizes. Your sagging pockets just gaping, fabric mouths unstuffed, unshut. Your dirty fists holding something inside you, a poem that only knows these rooms. And I think if there's time, I'll probably do 2 more. Is that okay? Can I do 2? All right. So this is called Polka Dots and Moonbeams, which is the name of a very old song. We lift our eyes from dreams, from pillows, light in the eye of the morning. And there you are, as in the dreams, smiling, fuzzy-eyed and lovely. We wander, meander in wonder together, our hands never lost when near one another. And our eggs never crack, a bond that binds a man, a woman, who dare to wake in the same bed, hands folded like blankets. A song unfurls the hair of your eyes, lets them blow about the desert, tans, browns, blacks, and rust. If this dream woke us, where would we be found? And finally, this is called Half Asleep in a Land, Half Asleep is a Land of Brilliance. Hold me, just hold me, even if I am a blanket filled with rocks, even when I can't see anything but dirty laundry and another view through dusty blinds might blind me. Even if 3 weeks is only the time it takes to remember the name of that actress from that show about the doctors. Cross 3 names off a list you keep in your dreams. Use a special pencil to do it. Tell me all about it. What if 3 weeks really isn't that long, just long enough to break in a new bathing suit and a pair of fancy pink sneakers? Do your best to hold me, especially when you're not sure if I'm scared or if it's just the shakiness of this reawakening world. Let's keep us near us. Keep doing the same claustrophobic dances, decades of bad posture allowing. Thank you. Thank all of you for coming, and thank you, Great Weather for Media, for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm proud to be part of this family.
Let's hear it for SB Stokes and Bad Posture. I love it. Fantastic. We are going to keep moving forward with the great Francine Witte.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. What a nice introduction. Very nice to be here. And also, I'm kind of also watching on Facebook. So hi to everybody. I always do that because I'm a little crazy. But anyway, so I'm going to start with the poem that was in the Boneshaker, which is ironic because it's the final poem from the collection, which I always kind of felt was great. This is called Learning to Trust Your Gut. Remember that first, you are an animal, reacting in animal ways. Your nostrils flare at predators. Your eyes squint you out of the sun. Your body tells you everything. You know all this. You've always known, but still you have doubts. You button a blouse over a twinge in your belly, smooth lipstick over a quivering lip. You teach yourself to adjust, and when alarms go off, blaring you out of a burning building, you learn to breathe shallow or step around the flames. You know a lie in a whisper or taste goodbye in a kiss, but you have magazines stacked to the ceiling telling you to ignore the flutter inside your bones. But listen, your heart's in a cage for a reason. It's a prisoner banging up against the walls, scraping a cup along the bars, just waiting for someone to hear. I watch a lot of, and I know that was totally incorrect, Natasha, but it's, for this poetic license about what the heart is, doing really. This is called Home Shopping because I'm sort of an addict. This is what I've been doing all pandemic, is shopping online and watching the Home Shopping channel. So late night, all alone, amethyst twinkling from the TV set, the beautiful O of stones. I feel like an O myself is 0 because 3 a.m. is when the world gets so quiet, you hear everything. The host is a piano of teeth and a candle of eyes. She says things like special value, very rare, and I'm thinking she doesn't mean me. No, she is talking about the necklace. Every stone faceted, perfect. She flickers it under the camera lights and the amethyst looks like night stars, which takes me back to my own summer nights on a blanket with some boyfriend or other, the smell of sweetgrass and his ropey teenage neck, his hands damp, a tremble of lust, and even the sky wasn't bigger than we were. I look back at the TV. I wonder if amethyst has a smell. Thank you. Definition. The little boy asks his family what a lemon is. The mother, mostly apron, says, "Oh, I use it in my cooking, also to sprinkle on fish." The father, who is rumpled like the evening paper, says, "Ha, a lemon is the car your mother's brother sold me." The boy's older sister is boy drunk, and she says she uses lemons to bleach freckles off her face and also to blonde up her hair. The boy then asks his grandmother what a lemon is. She is round-shouldered and pucker-skinned. She only comes downstairs once a day now. Other times, she is in the attic where she lives. A tiny window, a tinier view. She says, the sun is a lemon, sometimes a slice, sometimes a wedge. It fits different each day in the window, and each day a little less yellow than it was the day before. Where did you go? This is the answer to that question. Where did you go? I went thin as pears, all sliced up and see-through. I went halfway to happy. I went to a place where I don't have to answer. I went sniff in the air. I went to the arms of another. I went bent as bones. I went to a job without a computer where I stand in the field and the sun wets my back. I went behind the numbers on a wristwatch. I went hundreds of miles from your eyes. I went all unmarried, and you cannot stop me. I went where the questions stop smack in the air long before they get to my ears. I went to before I even know you, that spot in the morning about to begin, that curl of a mouth turning into a smile, that moment a flower opens up like a hand. Lone earring. Found last night in my jewelry box, cheap dangle of rhinestone, clip on and just a bit of pinch. I wore the pair of them the night we drove around, the two of us new and hungry for us. We found a quiet spot to park, the city all around us, the beep and roar of living cars and the island of us two in the middle. You kissed my earring right off that night, I would later joke. And later you would say you found it on the mat, how you hung it on the rear view, attached it to your college tassel, and liked to watch it all sway as you drove along. You later told me how you liked how it shimmered the sun, the glassy stab of it, that probably still hurt a little even after we were done. Split. The day is slowing to a shiver now, slowing and blacking into night. And that's when your father comes home, whole in his soul, and says things like supper and bitch. And your mother slams back, you're late. And you are standing there not knowing which way to turn. And the anger that was floating like day dust on the sunlight air springs up and gathers and plants itself in that hole in your father's soul, just digs, and your father is bare now. Little more than a pair of hands lunging towards your mother, who has broken her own self and is saying things like, I don't love you anyway. And if you only knew, and you're watching all this being pulled like your taffy or a jump rope because you're still a kid and you want to go to your happy place. A beautiful beach, which at any time you can walk into the ocean, go back to your fish self. The swimming sperm that crossed your mother's insides, that split second that you were about to become you. And the only trembling was coming from love and desire. And if someone were to ask you at that moment, which of your parents you needed more, you wouldn't have to choose. And my last poem, it's a prose poem actually, is just a general question I have, like, why are we so stupid? You know, simple enough. If you look at the moon in a certain way, it's a light bulb in the universe dark. It shines on the trees and the farms and the chickens clucking and pecking and the men walking their other women home before they go back to their wives. It lights up the haze that's been hanging for days like a garlic mist. It lights up the sculptures of coastlines, the Mediterranean lapping at the island shore. It shines on the breast of a woman whose heart is beating, keeps beating even after love has struck her down. It shines, and you wonder where the light switch is, maybe behind some monster gallery grate that scrapes the sky, and you know one day it will burn out anyway, and no one will be tall enough to reach it or in the mood enough to try, and it'll just stay burnt out and broken, even though, like anything else, it should be simple enough to change. Thank you, everyone.
Give it up for Francine Witte, everybody. Jazz hands. Before we proceed, I just want to say that I caught a passing glance in Craig Kite's camera of an award-winning poem. So I want to send love out to Michelle Whitaker today. We miss you too, Michelle. Yeah. Okay. Without further ado, our next reader is Brendan Gillett. Brendan, take yourself off mute.
I'm off mute. Yes?
Excellently.
All right. All right, hi everybody. Thank you to Great Weather for Media, and especially thank you to Thomas, who was like one of the first people to invite me to do features years ago, and I'm really happy to be back here. I'm gonna start with the poem that I have in the Careless Embrace of Boneshaker. This poem is called A Brief History of Every Internet Argument Ever. The sound of special 2-cent pennies in a shiny blender rattling so loud that the glowing decals threatened to fall off and reveal the old mechanics, gears made of stone and fossilized intentions. As the pennies tornado, the questions, will it blend or will they carry or will everyone remember which penny they threw in the first place? The motor stops from neglect. The blender opens with a whiff of raw copper. The pennies are scratched, but mostly from the blending. Occasionally, a little piece of one will embed itself in another, sometimes a rejected sliver, sometimes smelted into the original as the face is reshaped. And it's funny, the newest pennies shine the brightest, but scratch the best. The middlest pennies have been calcified by battle, and the oldest pennies become worn and green until they are almost unrecognizable, until they are kind of like the pennies they used to argue with. And then I put together a little set for this reading that has a running theme through it, but it covers a lot of different topics. So I'm just going to read them. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking in between them really, and just kind of like poem. On finding the perfect scoop of beans for the bag. 2 cracked pitchers, blue tape to measure, bin of beans. Pile of paper sacks between us, rhythm becoming ritual. Packing donation bags for the neighborhood, second shift. Para Blanquitos, Hacienda, Ayuda Mutua, and La Pandemia, we discuss how nice it is, repeating ourselves into happiness. How this is all you need sometimes, if it is only sometimes. Debate between efficiency and meditation, unimportant. And what is the role of the poet regarding these moments? Small measures of time, full to the top of the line, ready. Should some things just be without needing to be written of? Does writing destroy significance rather than highlight? Do I present this to show virtue, how I gave of my time? If we feel better for doing it and the food went to families, then we're all eating, right? I am a high school teacher, and this next poem is for my students. When you leave here, remember how you felt. I don't care if you remember what a story arc is. I don't care if you want to read books. I don't care if you think metaphors are better than similes. I don't care if you can't quite grasp characterization. I don't care if you liked repetition and variation as a poetic device. I want these things to be true. But I do not care if they are not. I am almost careless, save one carefully cultivated aim. I care that you leave this room remembering how it felt to be able to learn something, share something, work something out together, be part of a group, try things even when they were hard, do things you didn't want to do because they helped others while holding space to do whatever you needed to do. This is, of course, harder to teach than anything on my curriculum map. So I'll just have to keep providing an environment and opportunities and hope you pick up on it. This next one, I know I said I'll stop talking between, but they all require some explanation. I do a 30-30 every November, and I take a lot of prompts from my friends. And so this next one is the prompt and then the poem. This is from a fellow teacher who said, write a poem from the perspective of a teenager attending school 50 years from now, or better yet, a teacher teaching 50 years from now. So this is called, It's Not Indifference so much as it is undifferent, for Rita and the future students. We scream in the hallways, run unobstructed and open, and the stairs, always the stairs, everything in the stairs. Class happens, we pass or we do not. It passes us, we take passes into the hallway, talismans against rules still, and the stairs, always the stairs, everything in the stairs, building on everything before. Whatever the teacher says passes into the hallway, talismans against rules, still searching out a sense of identity, embrace of cliches, building on everything before. for whatever the teacher says, what seems dramatic, what seems earth-shattering, all of us searching out a sense of identity, embrace of cliches, like there is no yesterday, and there is no yesterday. What seems dramatic, what seems earth-shattering, all of us hurtling ourselves forward. Isn't that what teens do? Like there is no yesterday, and there is no yesterday. We scream in the hallways, run unobstructed and open. They scream in the hallways, run unobstructed and open, and we forget our yesterdays, claim absence of yesterday, hurtling themselves forward. Isn't that what teens do? Caught up in their drama, we remember its contours and we forget our yesterdays, claim absence of yesterday. What is this task? What is our space? How to reach through? Caught up in their drama, we remember its contours as we ignore the ghosts of ourselves and the forerunners. What is this task? What is our space? How to reach through and give something that can travel out the door, useful as we ignore the ghosts of ourselves and the forerunners, a search always for the new, how it must be, how it will be, and give something that can travel out the door, useful because useful, but useful, so useful as to pass into a search always for the new, how it must be, how it will be, until we realize, until we run, screaming in the hallways. And for this next one, actually, am I able to share my screen? No, that's fine. I can do this without sharing my screen, but this is from a series that I've been working on that is a recipe on one side, and then there's a poem aligned on the other side. And it's more fun if you can see it because a lot of the lines line up in fun and interesting and really productive ways. And it's extremely brilliant if you look at it on the page, but we're just going to hear it, and you'll have to trust that I'm as incredible at writing as I say I am. So this is called Twice Roasted Pumpkin Chicken Thighs. I'll do the recipe and then the poem. Ingredients: sugar pumpkin, olive oil, salt, bone in, skin on chicken thighs, spices. Remove the stem, cut the pumpkin in half and scoop out the seeds. You can roast them later as a treat. Oil the pumpkin halves all over and bake at 400 degrees face down until skin comes off easily with a fork. As pumpkin cools, debone chicken thighs, add bones to stock collection, and sort of open them skin side down on a baking sheet. Cut small pieces of pumpkin and replace the chicken bones. Add spices, refold the thigh using skin as binding, place skin side up and drizzle with oil. Roast at 400 degrees for half an hour or until chicken is cooked and skin is crispy. Recommended spices: salt and pepper, curry powder, paprika, shoyu or aminos, Burberry, cayenne pepper, pumpkin spice. I try this first alone. New twist on this is a staple, foundational and contained today. When I add you, and we will cut the thighs in half to share the 4 different surprises. We sweat on the floor as we slowly roast in open overalls and skinned off sweatshirts as we eat and discuss plans for later. Like those tickets for December, our history unfolds at the table, but it is richer now. Replace the bone with pairings of variety and routine, bound by time and memories, lying with our skin coated in oil. This meal is so full, simmering stock of knowing and the crisp softening overnight. I will eat this again with another friend, at work in glass, late night cold, reheated on rice, in thoughts, in plans, alone. And then this one I think is gonna be my last. And this is another one from the 30/30 series. So I'll give you the prompt and then the poem. As for a prompt, if you're still looking, maybe something about the various ways people try to preserve a half-drunk bottle of wine. XO, Oge. If something is enough of a fixture, you can forget it. For Oge. Diminishing flavor, ephemeral and fleeting, bouquet wilting. The party's over, the party never started, time to rest. Once done, never undone, fated for ruination. What enjoyment is brought, and how? A stopper, cork, screw top, empty, neck spilling secrets loosely, flip upside down again, shake to find one last drop, turn, patience, come again, swap delicacy with acid and vitriol, vinegar of 1,000 uses, evolving utility, new complexity, fermentation beyond requirement, open, hide until forgotten, take up space, claim staple, expanding flavor, deposited and stable, weeds growing. That's it for me. Thanks, everybody.
All right, let's hear it for Brendan Gillett. That was fantastic. We've got 3 more poets for you. We're going to just plow through. Next up, we have Dan Raphael.
Muted. All right. So just go. Are you hearing me? Okay. Yeah, so in the last 2 years, I've had 4 books out, which is kind of good on its own, but 3 coming out in COVID means there was no place to read. But so 3 poems, 3 books today. The first poem was in the Boneshaker and is in many things. All the books are available through the Big A, unfortunately. Another of those mornings. Something the stomach wants and has no word for. Waking beneath a sky it's never seen, a sleeping bag of questionable origins. Could be a field with no visible buildings, could be a park next to morning traffic. I haven't learned how they say hungry here. Where do I recycle whatever I drank to have so brilliant a headache, as various parts of my brain blame each other for this? A faucet without handles, a sink I can't reach the bottom of, the whistling of steam that's a parrot changing channels to become a forecast of pale green sky and clouds as layered as shale. The weather woman comes in the back door with a basket of purple tomatoes and 3 dancing cucumbers that I feel the base in the floor through my suddenly handsome feet, as if a roller belt of sand rippling regular to strengthen my legs and spine, bring my head closer to the ceiling fan of muscular arms and flamingo necks. The only way to stop spinning is sit on a bar stool salvaged from this town's oldest tavern before the meteor struck it, but I can't pay the cover charge as my wallet's in that sleeping bag, unzipping to another assignment. Yeah. This is the book, Maps, Menus, and Emanations, that just came out this June from Cyberwit in India. And here's a poem from it, Broken English. When culture takes wing, trailing fluff and flakes, suggesting maybe runes melted into asphalt, lead letters, Teflon letters, mercurial vows. Throw a stone into a dictionary, photograph the ripples, playing back in slow-mo translation to blend elastic letters, porous consonants, plosives without timers or fuses. Since yeast can produce alcohol, can alcohol help our words rise, punched back down and left in a dry corner, focusing the spotlights for baking without smoke? The open mic vacuum draws in the friction of crows, mumblings of 5-cylinder engines. If you can handle manual transmissions anymore, gotta be automatic, cellular, so many tones between first and second, all solos, no harmony, spilt beer revealing invisible ink, whether the papers from tree, hemp, rags, papyrus. Eventually, the archaeologists realized that ziggurat was a novel pressed into clay. I read the words on the screen without conviction. Output without input, context-free text. A few new images and a misheard phrase burst in me with a Malthusian froth, muscular riptides dancing with undercurrents that just escaped. I know there's a set of traps and symbols around. I'm ready to unroll the scrolls disguised as a steel string, pressing the pickup into my forehead to amplify whatever's left in there. Will our earbuds sprout in spring? Always somewhere in me, green and damp, the sunshine of my love for the next unexpected enjambment, the myth reduced to a sonnet, the cliche about to remind us how it got that way. And I'll close with, what's the closing poem in Moving with Every, a great painting by the Seattle native artist, John Strongbow. And the title goes like this: Dancing like nobody's watching in a constant surveillance world. When all the music's made us deaf, All the dancing and runnings put us on wheels. I feel a bass I can't see or hear. My bones metallicized by rust-felt childhood. Bridge cables needing at least 12-mile-an-hour wind to start a rhythm. How many gulls and crows, the black and white keys, chords of brown sparrows, yellow finches, and cardinals so no blender can dissolve. The sun's shining, but I couldn't afford my subscription, my prescription. The faucet runs 2 hours a day with a row of paint chips adjacent to tell how much I can drink without a rupture. Walls devolving into glass-free windows and unframed doors, as if this patch of abdominal skin can go another day without washing. But when are safe, warm hours to sit in the laundromat with exposed muscles and viscera while my skin goes beyond a delicate cycle? Mom's old curlers rise above the city as cell towers, growing and dividing. Mitotic bubbles of unclaimed and rejected messages rain like jellyfish. With so many offers, invitations, and why do you never answer? That's not a light switch. This only looks like a handgun. Anything can be a lighter, a letter opener, salt and pepper shakers responsible for 3 miracles and 10,000 lunches. When I stop looking at the clock in the sky, my skin breaks out into sunlight. If I don't like how the wind smells, 10 minutes will bring a different food truck. All the cars replaced with teleporters, but old freeway noise tracks maximize the roar that prevent our imagination from flowing out of us so quickly our instrument could choose sides or at least be seriously bruised. We're home. We're hungry 3 ways. The extra bedroom's always busy, as if we live in a silo, a cornucopia where the inventory's in constant flux and filament. In this new green world where all the rain goes right to the brewery, I snap open a couple cans to hear and smell the clouds releasing. Clouds looking for a good time, a time they're not subject to or object of. How could the ancients have described marvelous sunsets when they couldn't see blue and the air was pre-industrial? Some visionary Roman turned mad as he saw the Appian Way become the Autobahn, a highway with no exits but plenty of tolls, toll drones scanning your credit line and gene spectrum. As if any scan could tell how I dance like, how high I can jump, how many genera established in the hanging gardens of my lungs, how the only reason my thumbs don't fly south is I need them as spoons. When the music embargoes the outside while focusing the body on the moment, partners in a ritual of earth drums, city bass, eyes flashing brass, finger reeds, heartstrings, off the charts and in the groove. I'll never do these moves again and don't need to. When they cut the power, police the streets, sever my legs, pour recycled aluminum in my ears, I'll dance even more vigorously, intently, unstoppably. No one will get near me. The music only gets louder. Thank you.
Snaps and claps for Dan Raphael. Moving right along, our next reader is one of Great Weather's oldest West Coast friends. Loranger doesn't count because he's bi-coastal.
He's bi. Yeah.
He maintains a dual life as both a novelist and a poet, and we get both of them today. It's Mary Mackey!
Hi, everybody, and thank you to Great Weather. This is always my favorite group of poets, my favorite press. You never hear a bad poem here. It's wonderful, and I'm really pleased to be part of the California, part of the menage a trois. So I don't know if I'm 1, 2, or 3 in the menage a trois, but I'll take any position in this. I've been thinking a lot about how, people, well, I had a peculiar experience in February where I was in Mexico and I was reading stuff straight out of Wuhan. And I realized that there was going to be something really bad coming because I had access to what the doctors were writing in the hospitals. So I bought some, I was in Mexico, I bought some masks, about 10 masks, and I brought them back and I tried to give them to people. And they thought I was an idiot. And they rolled their eyes and they said, don't be ridiculous and you're being hyper anxious and what's wrong with you? And they wouldn't take them. So I ended up donating them to a hospital and things got bad. But I started thinking about Cassandra and how people, she was always right, the Greek prophetess, always right, and people never listened to her. That was her curse. She always told the truth of what was coming and nobody ever paid any attention. And so I've been doing a series of poems, which I might call prophetic poems, only the stuff is catching up so fast they no longer seem prophetic in any way. And I think I'm going to call the book Mocking Cassandra. And so this is the title, possibly, this is the title poem possibly from that book. Mocking Cassandra. When she said 6 shining cities greater than Troy will sink beneath the waves like silver-scaled jackfish. When she said 10,000 birds with black tongues will fall from the sky onto beaches of green foam. When she complained that the cries of unborn children were keeping her up at night. They called her crazy, drove her from town to town, barefoot, clad in rags, her only possessions, a begging bowl and a throat scorched with pity. How like her, they said, always overly vigilant. What a fool our poor Cassandra is. Everyone knows the future will be just like the past. Time, my girl, is a rock, not a river. I'm only trying to tell you what the gods have shown me, she insisted, only trying to convince you to save yourselves. God keeps whispering in my ear and his whisper has become a hiss. When she started storing beans and flowers, filling stone jars with water, hoarding drugs that could stop pain and pills that could help her sleep, they threatened to cut out her tongue, but she refused to shut up. She could feel the storm gathering, darkness running around, the rim of the horizon like heat lightning, rainbows bleeding into a smear. She could see, as plainly as she could see her own face in a mirror, the end of lights you could turn on with a flick of a switch, swimming pools full of clean water, dishes washed by machines, the casual way you could call people on the other side of the planet, hear their voices, touch their faces, feel their love. Scavengers. The sun is scorching the horizon, each step crackling like candy wrappers. Above us, the stars float, gritty and abandoned in cinders. Your tongue tastes like apples, and the secrets of the North are written on glass. In this city, our abandoned bodies, death, in this city of our abandoned bodies, death leads the way, piping on a flute of bone. Here, not here. While I was in Mexico, I was in a cafe and I blinked and I saw the cafe empty. And then I had a vision of all of New York empty. This is, I don't think prophetic because I was reading about this stuff, but it was a very bizarre experience given what happened subsequently. Here, not here. Cafes full, 45-minute waits, hot soup, grilled shrimp, children running between the tables. Now, empty. West Village, the deli, the library, people swarming out of the 14th Street subway station. Empty. Cars rusting, a sheet of white paper flapping like the wing of a wounded bird, water in the subway tunnels, blind fish white as bones swimming in circles. At the solstice, a Stonehenge of tall buildings, blinding light, heat unbearable, cactus in Washington Square Park, dust clouds marching toward Ellis Island. At night, a city so bright you can see it from space, lost in a darkness so thick it sticks to your tongue like the breath of ghosts. This next one has a quote from 2020, which is only more relevant. And the quote is, "July was the hottest month on record for the planet." I think we still surpassed that now. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Heat shadows fall on sidewalks, burning our footprints into the cement, like gray silhouettes left on the walls at Hiroshima. A child chasing a ball, a dog pulling on a leash. Two lovers spinning to face one another as a second sun rises over the city and the world goes white. On the trees, the ghost leaves dangle like mute wind chimes, and the earth stretches still and hot for as far as we can breathe. Over our heads, a great empty sky hovers like a crystal falcon. Tell me, love, what sun-scarred thing will walk out of the glitter that is playing across the western horizon tonight, like molten steel? Prophecy of Solange. Solange is a character who recurs in my book, The Jaguars That Prowl Your Dreams, which is my most recent book. It's a collection of poems. And she's, palpably, she could be a muse, an ex-lover. You don't know what she is, and I'm never telling. Okay. Prophecy of Solange. I am your fire dancer, your goddess with burning hair, your monkey gatherer, bird rescuer, virgin harlot, rider of the green river, weaver of lianas, drinker of viper venom, keeper of the rainforests and of the margins of the rainforests and of the great drowned forests that sleep beneath the flaming trees. I can call down the stars that slither across your skies, move the 5 panthers that hold up the earth, summon the 6 jaguars that eat the moon. I can show you visions of your own destruction as easily as I can draw teeth. Come closer, hear my prophecy. She who you trample will trample you. She who you burn will burn you. She who you poison will rise resurrected and outlast you. The ice will return, the pure air will return, but you will not return. I warn you, stop it, stop now, full stop. The prophecy of the ghost of Elizabeth Bishop. In the park her lover designed, the Cassandra of the tropics wanders among the palms and jacarandas, while overhead long clouds shaped like white furred parrots skim south along the edge of Guanabara Bay, stabbing airplanes with smoking beaks. Here, she cries, is the future you have brought upon yourselves. Rio will drown, and Christ will be left floating above the waters, his stone arms outstretched over the last spires of the last churches, which fools will call a new crown of thorns. How beautiful the final moments of this great city will be, as the blue wash of the waves streams over the underwater jungles my darling Lata created, while far beneath the sun-fired surface, dead men ride on rented bikes past slack lines and coconut stands, and pale volleyball players whose faces are as white as the conch shells the mother of saints cast for divination. Here is my prophecy. The future is coming like a great wind. You who are setting the world on fire, turn toward Corcovado and whisper with water-swollen lips prayers to the earth, your mother. Beg for her to save you as you sink beneath your great, abandoned, floating Christ. And then the final poem I'm going to read is going to be the one from Careless Embrace of the Boneshaker. It's called Infinite Worlds, and it starts with an epigraph. The limitless content of, it's called Infinite Worlds. The limitless content of our universe might be only one instance of a large and possibly infinite number of other universes. Astronomer Seth Shotak, Director for Center of SETI Research. When you lift your fork, an infinite number of yous all lift their forks at the same instant. And an infinite number are missing their mouths, and an infinite number are choking on the tines, and an infinite number are being struck by meteors and vaporized, and an infinite number are being trampled by cattle or time-traveling mammoths or naked strippers who look like Martha Washington. And an infinite number of the strippers are spouting purple wings, just as Christ is coming back in the form of an infinite number of small green aliens who are explaining they're a poetry collective that specializes in holographs, and apologizing for the cultural disruption their guy on the cross experiment made. And that fork keeps rising and rising and destroying everything in its path as you commit suicide an infinite number of times and give birth to an infinite number of babies who drown in an infinite number of great rivers 150 miles wide, which suddenly appear out of nowhere carrying schools of voracious piranhas who devour an infinite number of your forks before they turn into an infinite number of gold, rats, hairpins, and hockey sticks. Because when there are an infinite number of worlds, anything can happen and will an infinite number of times, which is why the idea of infinity, like all things that have no limits, is impossible to grasp, even in your own kitchen, over a plate of fried potatoes with a red-handled stainless steel fork. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Mary Mackey. All right, we have one final poet left. It is Richard Loranger.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be here and thanks for hanging out. I'm so glad to be here at this reading because it's been fantastic. So I'm just going to read my poem from Boneshaker, which will take the whole time. So I'm going to dive in. It's a narrative poem. I don't write a ton of them, but about taking a walk in Brooklyn, where I lived for a long time. And it's called Bootism, Bootism. And there's the title in the chat in case that's confusing. It's the name of the poem, Bootism. After what feels like months in my room, talking to the bookshelves, gulping cigarettes, sucking in cathode rays, I walk outside. Just let me breathe. That's all I want. It's half a block before I even feel boots on concrete dusted with Brooklyn Queens Expressway grit. I try to look around and can't. I'm sensing through bronchi alone, clear, cool oxygen. The air is good today, thank God. I charge ahead, block by block, block after block, the brownstones, a blur of brown stone, the trees, vague, leafing entities, the cars, anathema and shunned. After 5 or 6 blocks, my vision starts to clear. There are the steps where I met Angeline. There's the kid that ran in front of my car last week. There's the corner where I first got lost. Fort Greene, real for a moment. I'm heading south, a bit calmer now, about to brave the traffic of Atlantic Ave. And I do feel an odd bravery coming on, facing part of what's kept me inside, the metal and mindless motion and fumes, this shrieking, honking, swerving impatience, this type A drive to get and do and go, to move, to thrust, to careen driven, this mess of mass. I cross the churning gauntlet on a cloud. I am untouchable because I will not touch. I stay astride the noisy artery Vanderbilt. The very name suggests the overbuilt. This cataclysm, it takes so much to step beyond. I'll stride this flesh through brick and glass, through concrete and the door to reach the park and soak in green. Isn't that what the skin craves through every goddamn pore? The breach of air, the momentary clack, the stench of chlorophyll and mud. Still a stretch to go, though, and it's not these sooty storefronts that I wish to see, the bullshit, the urge, the crack-a-day hustle. So I start to think about walking and about when I first ever thought about walking and about who first got me thinking about it. Could be Kerouac, could be Thoreau. No, I think it was old man Tolkien, great walker himself and writer of walking, who first gave me the thought, the gift of the thought, that one's own doorstep leads out to every road on earth. What was it? The road goes ever, ever on. That being on the road is being home as well, is being. And here I am, being, walking into Grand Army Plaza, giant, crazy whirlpool of cars. And I walk right in without breaking stride across 5 full lanes up onto the center island. And this no traffic island, but a real island in traffic with grass and trees and benches and a plaque and a huge, gorgeous arch leading nowhere but the center, ominous, enigmatic, and down again across 5 more lanes to a promontory of sidewalk, then across 5 more, all in stride, without pause or hurry, without a single honk, without a single oncoming vehicle to jar my pace, in what some might think a miracle, but I see at the time as just walking. I pause before the park in a coughing fit, then enter in, eager as ever to bask and head on up the path when the toxins kick in. Every cell gushing New York poisons to the blood, soot, monoxide, cigarettes, pesticides, thick perfumes, cheap hamburger steroids, cheap beer, spoiled food, lead chips, radium, and 1,000 million farts, ratcheting the veins and soaking the nerves in some deep hirsute panic. As I head on in, the park itself dims and I can barely see past my mind. That tree I love is leering like my last lover must when he thinks of me, the cold-hearted bastard. And why is he still in my head? Why does the mind retain that which spoils? One time I thought of a lost love for 2 years every time I tied my shoes. Not this tree, please. And there's the field, but I can only think of Boy Scout picnics with the stern adults, my father expecting so much of me who could barely tie a knot. I couldn't tie my shoes correctly till I was 32, that's true. And all these knots and the trees grinning, scars of storms and drought and all the shit of everyday life. And yeah, we all have scars, so why should I care so much about the grade school boys laughing at me for putting flowers in my hair? I put out a goddamn good school play, didn't I? Thank God I've forgotten their names and all those coked up, drunken nights with men I felt I couldn't fulfill. And the time I finally scored a touchdown in the game with the neighborhood kids on my own front lawn, running like mad and laughing, unstoppable, at last victorious, only to find I gotten turned around and scored for the other team. What a fucking dunce. And I'm turned around now, really disoriented. I've charged into a thicket up on some hillside. I should be able to see where I am, but I'm surrounded by cranky, thick 6-foot bushes. How did I even get in this fucking place? In a deep adrenaline surge, I crash right through into an open stand of trees. There's a dull throb behind my left eye, and the sky's a bit too bright. The speckling new leaves are letting in too much light and too many shifting patterns. I'm short of breath, and that old black tooth begins to sing. They say I have my mother's teeth, 4 pulled already and 3 dying, soon to be crunched and crumbled and spit in chunks about my boots. So I stand, staring at these old boots, beaten, scraped, discolored old friends who've carried me many, many miles. And for the first time, I begin to wonder where they're from. I bought them on sale 6 years ago at Strawbridge's, but really from some sweatshop in Asia or Seattle, maybe some underpaid worker churning them out, leaking their own sweat into the leather in that unpleasant boot in the face mood of capitalism you might call Buddhism. Buddhism, that's funny. Or might Buddhism be something else entirely? I think of that not so faceless worker's sweat in my boots and my sweat in my boots and the countless moods and molecules they've been through, and of how we invest ourselves in things and still our lives into the things we live with and through. And I think a good pair of boots is the Buddhist's way. I'm glad that's ridiculous. And of course, it must be to live through your boots, to live by walking, like Tolkien and Kerouac and Thoreau, who saw walking as living, life as a walk. And I think, shit, I started this walk in 1960. I take a big suck of air, sigh it out, stand there breathing for a minute, checking out the patterns of old leaves and new grass and how these oaks are really very happy today. Spring is finally soaking in. The leaves rustle very quietly. I think I can smell them. The air really is marvelous today, and I plunge on down the hillside out onto the edge of my little field. How did I feel so lost? Right here all the time. The sun is saturating this late April, late afternoon, and there's a bunch of little kids running and yelling in some ruleless game. Parents lounging on the grass, and a biplane sputters overhead with the banner saying, "No shit, happy April." And I walk back through the field, feeling the new grass through my boot soles, and all the way home, I have that rare state of mind where I'm seeing things I've never noticed, always in front of my face, always now seen. My favorite tree has a carving of a burning heart. At the entrance to the park, two old Italian men sit in their portable chairs, just sitting, as they sit every day. In the plaza, a tree has an army of sparrows. That building has almost sentient gargoyles bottom to top. That Botanica sells Breath of Jesus in a can. That driver is wearing a bunny suit. That man is mowing the sidewalk. There's a woman showering in the car wash. That house has Christmas decorations year round. Those steps are painted with a prayer to St. Francis. That kid that ran in front of my car is signing to his mom. The incense lady wears a button that says 59 cents. The corner deli sign has a pig with a halo. As I start back down my block, I think once again of the two Buddhisms. Buddhism, boot in the face. Buddhism, living through boots. One I despise and one I live. Then I recall the grass I trumped so gleefully in the late afternoon sun, the new green breathing grass, and I wonder if it's really just a matter of which side of the boots you're on. The shadows are long, air has taken a chill. I put my key in the gate, hear the familiar clink of the lock, and smell the musty entranceway. Well, that's it, just that one poem. Thanks. I'm reading again tonight. I'm gonna put the thing in the chat. I'm reading.
Show your love, Richard Loranger.